So there's a lot that's been said and written on morning routines. Morning routines are a very powerful concept. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how to approach your mornings to achieve more in the first few hours than the average person achieves on a regular week. Because most people, they wake up reactive to the day. They're not living a proactively designed day or life. And what you want to ultimately do is have what Josh Waitzkin would call a proactive day architecture, a proactive week architecture, and a proactive month and year architecture. And that means that you're the architect, you're the designer, and it's intentional. It's not reactive. Proactive versus reactive. And many people's lives are reactively designed where they're waking up, first off, on bad sleep, because research shows that over 90% of people go to bed scrolling, they're reactively scrolling, and it's called sleep procrastination. Then ultimately they never actually got into as deep of sleep. It wasn't as transformational of sleep. And then they wake up and fall into the same habit where they go back into reactive addictions, where they're just scrolling, seeing what other people are doing, bouncing, and then their day is reactively designed. It's not proactively designed, and so they're ultimately not accomplishing much. They're busy, they're doing a lot of activity, but there's not any forward progress towards their future self. When you're thinking about morning routines, it's really about making the farthest and biggest and most exciting progress. It's really about being in a deep flow state and having peak experiences every single morning, and ultimately getting yourself into a peak state in that morning, so that when you're operating from a deep flow state. And so I'm just going to share with you some very simple principles in this video for setting up that morning routine, like actually setting the stage, and then activities to do within the first few hours so that you can begin achieving more in the first few hours of your day than maybe in the past you did in a week, in a month. And you want to measure everything you do by progress and by depth of meaning, by quality, not quantity. It's not about packing in 50 items into your morning routine. It's also not about packing 50 items into your day. It's about what few things can you do that would radically advance you towards what you're ultimately trying to achieve. One of the concepts I love is called minimum effective dose, which is what's the minimum that you do that can actually produce the result you want. Most people are looking for maximum effective dose. Most people are looking at how much can I do, but they're seeing how much they can do to ultimately achieve very little. Productivity is about effectiveness. It's about actually making desired progress, whereas efficiency, which is how most people are, is about doing things as much, doing it as quickly or as fast as possible. But most people, because they're focused on efficiency, which is kind of a chronological or a quantitative model of time, they're doing a lot, but ultimately going nowhere. It's the hamster wheel effect. They're chasing the wrong thing, whereas what the Greeks would call kairos time is more of a qualitative time. It's more in terms of how Einstein views time, which is that the further you progress towards where you want to go, the slower time goes. You actually stretch and dilate and compress time because you're achieving the right things. You're expanding in the right way. So just a few simple principles that you can apply in your mornings and practices to help you achieve more. And one of the big things that you want is excitement. This is something I've been studying Elon Musk a lot lately, and he's fundamentally excited about life. He is excited about going to Mars. He's excited about maintaining what he calls the light of consciousness. Like, he's got huge purposes, and he talks very clearly about how you want to have a sense of adventure. You want to have a sense of purpose. You want to have a sense of mission that gets you excited. He says life's not just about solving one problem after another. It's about actually having a grand adventure and a grand mission. And so one obvious key to having better and better mornings is that you have a sense of adventure and mission and purpose that's got you ultimately excited and at momentum, big picture. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, talks about just the need for a purpose, that you're stretching and striving toward a worthwhile goal. Psychologists would call this having a sense of hope and commitment, that if you're not highly committed to specific goals and sense of purpose, then you're kind of wandering and aiming as a person. So you do want to have really big, exciting visions of your future self and of your mission and your purpose that just fundamentally have you juiced, have you excited, and that you're creating pathways every day and you're working towards those every morning so that you're just ultimately in a state of excitement. First key of setting up a profound morning routine is obviously optimizing for sleep. There's ongoing and enormous research that shows that if you're not getting 7+ hours of sleep a night, you're essentially damaging your brain. I know that there's a lot of debate on this, but for the most part, 8 hours of sleep is really great. I know every person is different. For me, I know I operate way better and I feel different on 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And so you want to just optimize for sleep. You want your sleep to be excellent. You want your sleep to be great. You want sleep to be something you're committed to. It's something you're excited about. And so it takes commitment. It takes what Ryan Holiday would call discipline to literally just go to sleep, because we live in a world of addiction and consumption. And it's just easy to procrastinate sleep. There's a lot of research on sleep procrastination where you're just staying up for another dopamine hit. No, you actually want to go to sleep. Turn off the phone, put it on airplane mode, actually be present, recover. And so one thing that the research really shows, and there's a lot of research on gratitude, is if you pull out your journal and physically write with your hand 3 things you're grateful for from that day, not only will you be happier, but there's a lot of research that shows you will literally sleep better if you do this. So rather than scrolling, rather than being reactive, rather than wasting your time and procrastinating sleep, actually have a sleep routine. Actually, research does show if you take like a hot shower or hot bath before sleep, it actually helps you because it raises your body temperature and then it begins to lower your body temperature. And it is good to sleep in a cooler state. I don't really do that myself, but what I do is I pull out my journal and I write 3 things I'm grateful for. This is something that we detailed in The Gap and the Gain, Dan Sullivan and I. And by the way, down below, you can actually get this book in Kindle form if you're in the US. And also down below, you can get this free Kindle if you're in the US. If you're not in the US, there's a link to get my peak state checklist. Also, if you would please like and subscribe to this channel. For me, and one of the things we detail in The Gap and the Gain is simply write down 3 wins for the day so that you're contextualizing the day as a win. This taps into gratitude, but it also taps into confidence. And so for me, it's just write down 3 things that you're happy about, forms of progress. They might not have been the 3 items on your to-do list. You might not have achieved exactly what you want to, but if you actually just write down 3 forms of progress, 3 wins, quote unquote, wins that you got that day, it helps you train your mind. You train your mind what to see. Whatever you're looking for expands. Whatever you focus on expands. Whatever you're focusing on, you create more of. And so if you train yourself to view the day bad because you only achieved 8 out of your 10 items on your to-do list, now you feel like a loser, then you're training yourself to feel and look like a loser in the morning. Whereas instead, you want to have very few things on your to-do list. Focus on quality, not quantity. That's a qualitative approach to life, is you want to focus on quality and depth, not quantity and surface level. No more than 2 or 3 items on your to-do list, focused on impact and focused on progress, not focused on getting a lot done. That's a key principle. But when you go to bed, just look when you're in your journal for 3 to 5 minutes max. Write things you're grateful for, but write down things that you saw progress on. Even if all hell broke loose and the day didn't go how you planned, you can still look back on the day and say, what did I learn? How am I better? How do I know more than I did when I started the day? Just write those down. It is helpful if you want to write down the 1 or 2 or 3 things max that you're committed to achieving the next day, and then closing it and getting excited about going to bed, shutting down. If you're someone who prays, pray, lay, take some deep breaths. Research shows that if you're actually trying to go to bed, you will be asleep within 7 minutes. And you can train yourself to fall asleep almost immediately, especially if you have a clear conscience for the day, a clear conscience about what you're doing, and if you're playing a longer game where you're committed to tomorrow as well, not just tonight. So you're setting up your future self the next day for success. So once you wake up, because you actually slept well, you're actually going to wake up energized. You also have a bigger sense of purpose, which Elon Musk talks about, that sense of adventure, that big project, that big purpose that's exciting you, but you also have set up yourself for a day of success, a day of focus flow, a day of you've got 1, 2, or 3 things max that you're deep on, and you then go deep on. When you wake up, there's a few things that obviously will help you, first off, wake up, but get energized and get into a flow state faster. One is changing your environment. And so for me, when I wake up, I get up, super hydrate, take various vitamins and things like that. And I get in my car immediately with my journal and I drive to the gym, or I drive, I just get outside my house. On certain days, I just love walking, but it's good to get your obviously self going. Everyone's going to have different routines when it comes to fitness, but it's good to get yourself out, get yourself moving. So for me, it's about getting into my car. That's kind of part of the trigger, part of the routine, and writing about my goals, like letting things go. A lot of research that shows that while you're asleep, your subconscious has been solving a lot of your problems. You've been actually learning, developing memories, especially if you were in deep sleep, REM sleep. Your brain did a lot of learning. And so the worst thing you could do when you wake up is pull out your phone and start getting input. Instead, you want to journal and you want to output the amazing things that your subconscious was doing. So even if you just journal for 10, 15 minutes and just write down whatever comes to mind. A lot of people have a hard time journaling because they have a hard time starting. really, for me, I just start journaling about, here's where I'm at. I'm literally parked in my car outside the gym. Here's what I'm going to accomplish today. Here's what I'm trying to work on. And then you just start writing. And eventually, after 5, 7, 10 minutes, you just let your thoughts come. And if you actually give yourself the space and you're not rushing it, you will be surprised by what comes, especially if you're active in your thinking, like not passive. But for me, as an example, because I was active in the idea that I was going to create a few YouTube videos today, I was active in the idea, what do I want to create these videos on? And I started coming up with literally dozens and dozens of ideas. But I also was thinking big picture about my future self, thinking about where I want to go. One of the things I've thought a lot about lately, I've been thinking about Bruce Lipton's work. Bruce Lipton's a really interesting biologist. He wrote a book called The Biology of Belief. Obviously, he's a controversial figure, but I've been thinking a lot about a concept called fitness function. Fitness function is the idea that as people, we're all focused on something and we're all narrowing our focus and we're all becoming someone. We're all optimizing for something. And so you obviously want to be very thoughtful about the direction your life is going, because like an airplane, if you're even 1 degree off for a long enough period of time, the compounding effects are that you're becoming someone fundamentally different than you want to be. And so you want to be hyper specific in the quality of who you want to be, the standards that you want to have, and the specificity of who ultimately you're becoming. And then you're constantly living your life, steering yourself in that direction. Doesn't mean you're always going to be in that direction. Airplanes, as I've heard it said, are off course 90% of the time, but they're constantly course correcting because they know the destination they want to go to. In the mornings are a great time to meditate on your future self and to get highly specific and then to think about it. And one thing that's really interesting about light in general, and light, according to Einstein's theories, is light is the fundamental building block of reality. The reason you're seeing or hearing this video is that information is being conveyed to you literally through light waves, through light. Information is stored and delivered through light. When you're thinking thoughts, those thoughts do travel throughout the world, and you can quickly get connected to people you want, to situations you want. And so thoughts really do become things. I love the book As a Man Thinketh. And so in the morning is a great time to meditate, visualize, and get specific about your future self and start thinking about pathways to get there. This is exactly what Jim Carrey did. He said he would visualize himself getting a $10 million check. And eventually he did get a $10 million check to make the movie Dumb and Dumber. That was his fitness function. He was optimizing to become that kind of person. And so in the mornings, not only can you think creatively about what you want to accomplish that day. And certainly your brain is primed for creativity first thing in the morning, but also you can visualize and get highly specific about who you want to become and how you might get there. And if you give yourself that space, your subconscious, your mind, and your creative self will start to give you incredible, inspired solutions. I also combine all of this, knowing that my brain is in a peak state, and getting myself into the right environment and having triggers and routines that tap me into this, which is journaling. I also personally pray and I ask for inspiration to give me ideas, to give me solutions, to open me up. But none of this would happen if I didn't have an active, committed mind to what I'm trying to accomplish. If you don't have an active, committed mind, then you're just going to open up your journal. You're going to be lethargic and you're just going to write a few words and you're just going through the motions. You want to be active. Again, back to the Elon Musk principle. You have an exciting sense of adventure towards something big that's energizing you. That juice is really important for waking up daily and being excited. But also you go to bed at night with a specific purpose for the next day, and you're actively thinking about your future self, visioning your future self, getting specific, thinking about how I can start achieving these things faster. You're just living in an alive, awake state, and you're learning from life, but also you're learning from your higher self. And you're journaling about it, and you're journaling and you're training your selective attention. As people, we all have a filter of the world. This is part of fitness function, by the way. Is fitness function enables you to train your subjective filter so that you can not only filter out the things that you don't want, but you can also see the things that were right in front of you all along, but you couldn't have comprehended because your filter couldn't detect it. Now your filter can detect it, and you can start seeing and creating the very opportunities and the conditions and the situations that you want. And you can practice this in small and simple ways. Just as an example for you, I was committed to filming a few great YouTube videos today. And so I'm now watching that unfold. Journaling doesn't have to be a long activity, but it can be something you get better and better at going deep on and opening yourself to. And it connects you with your future self. It also connects you with living well in the day. And then I would say the final aspect of an amazing morning routine is actually just going into a flow state. and doing the most important thing that day, the number one most important thing. This is what some people would call eating the frog. Some people don't like that term because they think it's negative. It's the main idea of do the most important thing first. Do something really important that day, ideally before 8 a.m., so that by 8 a.m., you've already achieved the most important thing. And so the rest of the day is honestly just sugar on top. Like, it's the frosting on top. You've done the cake. You woke up, you did visualization, you did meditation, which connects you to your higher self, which clarifies your vision, which brings all, which, using the quote from James Allen in the book As a Man Thinketh, men do not attract what we want, but we attract what we are. By visualizing, getting clear, you're actually evolving your identity. You're evolving your subconscious so that you're actually just beginning to operate as your future self. You're altering your subconscious by doing this. This is why you want to output before you input in the morning, is because you're actively altering your subconscious to be at the level of your dreams. And there's a great quote from David Hawkins. He said that your unconscious will only allow you to have what you believe you deserve. If you believe you deserve poverty, then your subconscious will see to it that you create that actuality. And so by going to bed, sleeping really deeply, waking up, and then getting into a frame of mind, getting into a journal, getting into a right place, you are training and altering your subconscious and your identity so that not only do you believe you deserve it, you believe you already are it. And so, to the quote from James Allen, again, you attract what you are, not what you want. And so you're just continually creating and being who you want. That's the fitness function, that you're specifically pointing your life in the direction you want. You're being that person, you're creating as that reality, you're feeling it, and then you're ultimately working on it. You're doing your fitness, getting yourself into an elevated, beautiful state, and then you're working on that most important thing first, being your future self now, but also not just being your future self, but you're being with the expectation and just the knowing, from thinking to feeling to knowing. You know that what you want is already yours. I love the quote from Florence Shinn that faith knows it is already received and acts accordingly. And so by visualizing, journaling, and just reaching a state of acceptance, you don't really care what anyone else is doing. You're no longer inputting as much. This type of schedule and this type of life stops you from inputting other people's agendas, other people's standards. And ultimately you start weeding things out. You start weeding out things like social media. You start weeding out things that are ultimately muddling your worldview. Because I love the quote, your input shapes your outlook, and your outlook shapes your output. And so you don't want to let bad ingredients into a soup that ultimately ruin the soup. And your mind, your worldview, your consciousness is kind of like that soup. And if you're just letting in random inputs, then you're actually setting up yourself for disaster, because you don't know what the soup's going to be. So you want to block yourself. You want to filter out lower and lower quality things. This is about a qualitative, not a quantitative approach to life. It's about doing quality things, getting better and better at fewer and fewer things so that you can achieve ultimately more and more. And it's about filtering out lower and lower quality things that no longer fit the filter of your identity, of your worldview, of your selective attention, of your fitness function. You're weeding out things that just don't matter, that will muddle you. And so if you can go to bed, optimize for sleep, wake up, hyperhydrate, and get yourself into a different environment and journal and get connected to your higher future self. And if you can also strategize in an active form creatively about what you want to accomplish. And then ultimately you could do some form of fitness, walking, and then do important work in a flow state before 8 a.m. And then if you want, go deeper and deeper and deeper. You can have such a great morning and you can be in such an alive state if you actually have a bigger picture purpose, if you love sleep, if you're not procrastinating sleep, and if you're architecting your days, weeks, and months for quality, not quantity. And if you're filtering out more and more stuff that muddles and distracts you, then you're in flow enormously more. You're actively focusing, you're actively recovering, you're living life beautifully. And I can just say, I love waking up from a great sleep, doing these activities, achieving enormous things, feeling great, and then living great for the rest of your day without feeling like you need to work all day, without feeling like you need to work harder. It's about getting yourself into that flow state, achieving what is great, and then recovering and continuing to live well throughout the rest of your day, throughout the rest of your week, throughout the rest of your month. Again, I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. If you like this kind of content on maximizing towards your future self, and on what I would call exponential psychology. Please subscribe to this channel. Again, down below, you can get either Be Your Future Self Now or The Gap and the Gain in Kindle. I've already bought a lot of the codes, and so you can just go to the page, put in your email, and you'll immediately be given the code if you're in the United States. If you're not, very sorry. That's just how Amazon works in this case. You can get my peak state checklist, and have an amazing day. See you.